In this video, we'll talk about MHC presentation. We would look at how class 1 and class 2 MHCs are displayed on the cell surface and processed by the cellular machinery. So class 1 and class 2 MHCs are different, and class 1 MHC displays endogenous antigen or viral peptides, whereas class 2 MHC displays exogenous antigens. Question is how antigens are loaded onto the MHC and how they are displayed on the cell surface. So class 1 MHC can be found in any nucleated cell type, and class 2 MHC is found in professional antigen presenting cells such as dendritic cells, macrophages, or B cells. Now let's look at the MHC displaying procedure. So be it class 1 or be it class 2, both of them are proteins, so they are encoded by the gene. There are specific MHC1 and MHC2 specific clusters in specific chromosomes. And if you want to know more about that, you can click on the I button, but these clusters would eventually produce the class 1 MHC or class 2 MHC. So the protein is basically translated and moved to the endoplasmic reticulum. So in the endoplasmic reticulum, there are certain chaperones which basically helps in the protein folding. Eventually, there are other chaperones which help in the assembly process of these class 1 MHC and the beta 2 microglobulin. And eventually, what happens is there are specific proteosomes which are known as immunoproteosomes break down endogenous proteins and make fragments of it. And these fragments enter the endoplasmic reticulum with the help of tap transporter. Once they enter through the tap transporter, they get displayed on the surface of the newly formed MHC class 1 molecule. So from the endoplasmic reticulum, using specific anterograde transport machinery, they would be moving towards Golgi apparatus. In the Golgi apparatus, they basically get some modifications, and eventually from the Golgi it takes another route of like vesicle trafficking, and ultimately it is displayed on the cell surface. So now what happens is, in class 2 MHC molecule processing, the MHC2, both the chains are produced, and then what happens, the endogenous antigens are loaded onto the class 2 MHC molecule, and these exogenous antigens come via endosome, because there are some exogenous antigen which are taken inside by endocytosis or phagocytosis. Eventually there are phagosome or endosome that fuses with this vesicle. Now generally the site where the antigen is binding in class 2 MHC is blocked by a specific molecule. For details, you can watch a different video, but in this video we are not going to talk about that much. So that kind of like block is removed when there is added exogenous antigen. Then it is loaded on the peptide loading groove of the class 2 MHC. Eventually the class 2 MHC bound vesicles are displayed on the on the cell surface. This is how the class 2 MHC molecules are displayed on the cell. So I hope this video was useful. One thing you have to understand is the antigens which are presented on the class 1 MHC are endogenous, and they are degraded by the immunoproteasome, and extracellular antigens are engulfed into the cells, and they are basically degraded by lysosomal enzymes, or sometimes pH change can lead to degradation of those proteins. In this video, we'll talk about processing of the class 1 MHC molecule in bit more details. In earlier video, we have talked about this process as an overview. Now we are going to delve into details of class 1 MHC and class 2 MHC presenting in much more elaborate fashion. So any nucleated cell would display its self-antigen or endogenous peptides on class 1 MHC molecule, whereas antigen presenting cells such as dendritic cell would display exogenous antigen, let's say, which is coming from a bacteria or a pathogen on class 2 MHC molecule. Our focus is class 1 MHC molecule presentation in this video. So here is a normal nucleated cell which would have MHC1 and MHC2 cluster in its genome. In this case, the MHC1 cluster would be expressive, and it would give rise to the MHC class 1 molecule components, and it would be translated onto the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and the protein would enter the endoplasmic reticulum. At this point, the MHC class 1 molecule is basically in an unfolded state. So what you're looking at right now is the class 1 MHC molecule alpha chain. It would eventually be folded by the help of chaperones like calnexin. So there are also other molecules like ERP57. This would form the disulfide bonds in these class 1 MHC molecules. So they take part in the initial folding process of the class 1 MHC molecule. After the alpha chain is folded, the beta 2 microglobulin would attach to this complex. This would allow dissociation of calnexin and replacement of calnexin with calreticulin. And additional to calreticulin, there would be ERP57, there could be tafacin and tap transporter. So all of these forms a complex known as peptide loading complex. Now, where does the peptide come from? The peptide is actually generated by immunoproteasome in the cytoplasm. So big peptide fragments are broken down into small fragments which enter the endoplasmic reticulum with the help of the tap transporter. Notice that tap transporter is in near vicinity of the class 1 MHC molecule, and it all formed a peptide loading complex. With the help of tapsin and ERP57, the peptide loading groove of MHC class 1 would eventually be loaded with the self peptide. What happens when it is loaded with the self peptide? Eventually it would leave the ER with anterograde transport mechanism and it would reach the Golgi. From the Golgi it would travel through the trans-Golgi network and eventually follow that anterograde vesicular transport pathway to be displayed onto the cell surface. This is how class 1 MHC molecule is displayed on the surface of any nucleated cell. Now, what is the significance of displaying self-peptides on the class 1 MHC molecule? What is the benefit of it? Well, there are many benefits. Sometimes what happens is, these kind of MHC bound peptide give the cell as a self-recognition capability. So it's kind of like a flag that everything is okay. Now what happens is, in many cases, like when there are virus infected cells, some of the viral peptides are also represented to the CD8 positive T cell by the class 1 MHC molecule. So in this case, the class 1 MHC and the TCR interaction triggers the release of cytotoxic material from the CD8 positive T cell, which lead to the apoptosis of the virus infected cell. Also, in case of tumor cells, there are many antigens and proteins which are very specific to that tumor cell. And these unique proteins are also displayed on the class 1 MHC molecule that can be recognized by a CD8 positive T cell and which can secrete or mount an immune response against this tumor cell. Now we understand why class 1 MHC molecule is really important in context of tumor immunity or immunity against virus. Now let me tell you that there are cell categories known as natural killer cell, which scans each of the cells for any kind of wrong aspect. Like the way they scan is basically with their inhibitory receptor. So they are always engaged to kill. They are cold blood killers. So they are always engaged to kill. If somebody is not actively protesting and preventing the killing procedure, they would kill them. Class 1 MHC actually interacts with the inhibitory receptors and ensures the killing doesn't happen. It's a signal for the NK cell to disengage. But imagine a scenario where the MHC class 1 molecule is not displayed. Then natural killer cell would find it and kill it. And that's what happens. And that's beneficial. Let me tell you why. Because many of the cases what happens is, many viral infected cells, in order to be saved from the CD8 positive T cell, they downregulate the MHC. So CD8 positive T cell would be confused because MHC bound peptides are really small in number, so they would disengage. But even though they disengage, the natural killer cell would feel that absence of class 1 MHC molecule and they would engage and eliminate the viral infected cell. So all of these tells us the importance of class 1 MHC molecule bound self peptide, sometime viral or sometime tumor peptide. So I hope in this video we'll be talking about MHC gene expression. So MHC gene and HLA cluster is a very important topic in USMLE step 1. This is a high yield video. So MHC stands for major histocompatibility complex, and there are two categories of MHC: class 1 MHC, which is found in any nucleated cell, and class 2 MHC, which are found in antigen presenting cells like this dendritic cell. Class 1 and class 2 MHC molecule differs in terms of their structure and type of antigen they display on their surface. For example, class 1 MHC displays endogenous antigen or viral peptides. Every nucleated cell has this. Class 2 MHC displays exogenous antigen that came from outward source, let's say antigen from a bacteria. Now it's also important to note that class 1 MHC has one long chain and one short chain, and beta 2 microglobulin is also there. And in case of class 2 MHC, there are two equal length chain, alpha and beta. So basically these chains are actually encoded by specific genes. So class 1 MHC genes encode these class 1 MHC mRNA that ultimately give rise to this particular domain-wise structure. Note that beta 2 microglobulin is not expressed by the MHC genes. In contrast, the class 2 MHC is encoded by two different genes, one for alpha chains, one for beta chains. Now the entire MHC gene is present in chromosome number 6, and it is known as the HLA cluster or human leukocyte antigen cluster. This cluster is around 4000 kilobase pair long, and it has different variations of class 2, class 1 and class 3 MHC molecule. It's important to note that MHC genes are highly polymorphic, meaning there is significant genetic diversity within this gene in a population. So this is how the overall cluster look like. This is an oversimplified diagram anyway. So the major players in class 1 MHC is A, B and C, and the class 2 MHC is DP, DM and DR. So MHC genes are inherited as linked genes. That means these genes in the chromosome are physically located quite close to each other. Due to this physical proximity, recombination is literally not possible. The probability is super low. That is why they are segregated as a unit. Then the question is, how does MHC diversity is achieved if recombination is not happening? And MHC diversity is really important because in the world there are diverse set of antigens that need to be presented to the immune system. Then how it is possible if there is no diversity in MHC? MHC diversity exists, but how does the gene expression explain this? So the answer lies in the polymorphism. MHC genes are highly polymorphic. So polymorphism refers to existence of multiple allelic form of MHC genes within a particular population. So we have to understand this polymorphism is a population level concept, not individual level concept. And these allelic variation result due to small genetic variation in the MHC locus. So question is, where does these genetic variation occurs? Throughout the MHC domains or any specific location is there? And the peptide sequencing shows the variability in the residues are specifically located in a distinct location. So it's not haphazardly located. Alpha 1, alpha 2 and alpha 3, there are specific locations which are hotspot for polymorphism. And it has been shown from extracrystallographic data that these highly polymorphic regions fall in the peptide binding groove of the MHC molecules. That means these changes would determine how MHC would interact with the antigen. And that is super important in context of immune system because pathogens are evolving all the time. They are creating diversity. So it's a constant battle with the pathogen, how our body's immune system can also bring in diversity. And this polymorphism is one of the way by which MHC diversity is orchestrated. Another typical factor about MHC allele is its codominant expression. That means allele from the mother and the father both are active. mRNA is transcribed from the paternal copy and the maternal copy as well. So the question is, why codominant expression is beneficial? Because this results in the expression of diverse array of MHC molecules on the cell surface. So generally it is another way of increasing the diversity, because if only paternal versions are expressed, it might not be that diverse. So if you have a combinatorial expression of paternal and maternal copy in different cell types, so diversity automatically increase. The entire goal of immune system is to create diverse set of MHC molecules. Now these MHC molecules are important in disease context. For example, these are important for autoimmune disorders. There are different allelic versions of HLA clusters. Let's say HLA class 2 MHC molecule has different diverse allelic forms. One of them is HLA-DR4. HLA-DR4 isoform is very much associated with the risk of developing rheumatoid arthritis. Not only this particular example, there are a plethora of examples which shows specific allelic variants of HLA, DR, DQ are associated with the risk of autoimmune disorders. Now, apart from these disease context, MHC got its name from tissue grafting experiments. So MHC, or major histocompatibility complex, was named because these set of genes and their product were involved, or they determine the compatibility of a graft. Whether a graft would be rejected or accepted, that depends on these gene products, and that's why doctors all over the world prefer HLA typing before tissue grafting. And this ensures that tissue graft is not rejected. Otherwise, there could be detrimental consequence of the tissue grafts. So I hope this video was quick and informative. If you like this video, give it a quick thumbs up. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you in the next video.